Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we continue to preview Eagles-Giants this Saturday in the divisional round of the playoffs. How much pressure is on the Eagles compared to their past playoff runs over the last 6 years? All that and more on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcoming Eagles fans to a Wednesday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase, and he's Gino Camilleri. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before because BetOnline is where the game starts. Just a few more days here before the Eagles debut in the 2022 NFL playoffs. The divisional round set for 8:15 kickoff at the Link Saturday night against the New York Giants. Gino, we're getting there, man. I'm excited. We got Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants joining us tomorrow. One more show on Friday, and then it's playoff time.
The divisional round is always exciting because you get two primetime events. You get two NFC primetime games. You get the one on Saturday between the Eagles and the Giants. Sunday night, you'll find out who the winner of that game plays between the Niners and the Giants. And I just remember back to that game against the Atlanta Falcons back in 2017, Lou, where you're saying, all right, we won this game. Let's see how it plays out. Let's see who we got to go play. We figure out we play the Minnesota Vikings. But it was a debut that went down to the wire, and hopefully it's not as stressful as that one. But this should be a game that we're going to be on the edge of our seats for quite some time, I would say.
And it doesn't still feel real, although the Eagles won 14 games this year for the first time in franchise history. They set all these records. They were clearly the best team in football. They had an MVP quarterback. We knew the bar was raised. We knew this year was going to be Super Bowl or bust, but it still hasn't really set in for me the magnitude of this game on Saturday, that they had a bye week. So if you win this game, you're already in the NFC Championship game, right? Because you watch the NBA and the NHL and even these wild card teams, and the path to get there, it takes a little while longer. And for the Eagles, like one win, you're already playing for a chance to get to the Super Bowl. So it feels surreal still that if the Birds get this win on Saturday, it's one more win at the Link, and they're in Arizona. I know we've kind of reflected on how they've turned things around these last 2 years, but I still can't believe the opportunity they have. It's such an exciting chance on Saturday.
It's a double-edged sword to where, yes, it's so thrilling and exciting, but at the same time, it puts so much pressure on you. Yep. It's not like the NCAA tournament, let's say, or the NBA or hockey, where you're probably going to beat up on a team that skated by to get in there. And
even if you don't, you could afford to lose a game or two, right?
Exactly. You have a 7-game series. You can't drop one here at all. And the Giants, it's a divisional opponent. The way they played Minnesota is a winning formula. If they take care of the football, control time of possession, Saquon Barkley is able to get things rolling, you're going to see a Giants team that could come out with a victory on Saturday night. But the Eagles, they know, they've been there before. This is the pressure. This is the expectation. And for you and I, what we were raised on, Lou, those early 2000s, this was it. Get to the divisional round, win, and get to the NFC Championship. That's all I knew. That's all I knew in my first 4 years. You win that one playoff game, and you have a chance to go and fight for a Super Bowl.
Right.
You know what the expectations did to them. It didn't always turn out great. But the 1 year that they don't have expectations, Lou, in 2017, they turn around and win the whole darn thing. So we'll see how it turns out this time.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, obviously we had that in the early 2000s. We had it in 2017. But, for the last 10, 15 years, we haven't been used to having a bye week where you win and you get to the NFC title game. I mean, you look at 2008, 2009, 2010, 2013, 19, 18 as well, 2021. You always had to go through the wild card round, and it was a longer, harder path sometimes with road games. This is really the first time outside of 2017 that you've had these kind of expectations. And Gino, it's different than 2017 because you were the only one seed ever since 1975, the restructure of the playoffs, where you were the first one seed at home to ever be an underdog. So honestly, this is the first time since those early 2000s where you are a top seed that's pretty much at full health, and you're a betting favorite to make the Super Bowl. Like, this window is Super Bowl or bust, I feel like, for the first time since probably 2004 with Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens, because even the other years you did win a title or you made it close, you were the underdog. 2008, you were the 6th seed. You look at 2009, 2010, 2013, 2 of those teams won a division and had a home game, but they weren't seen as a clear title favorite. And, 2017, they shocked the world with a backup quarterback. 2018 and 2019, quarterbacks had to pull these injury-ravaged rosters out of these impossible holes. Even last year's team had to come from behind on a 2-5 start. This is the first time since 2004. It's like, if you don't win it all this year, there really are no moral victories. I mean, we're going to find them if they don't win it, but it really is Super Bowl or bust.
I would have to agree, and I'm still under the sentiment that this time around is going to be much more sustainable than 2017, where you almost sold your soul for that year, because after that it was tumultuous. Like you said, the quarterbacks had to go down this stretch in 18 and 19 and win out all those games, and Carson Wentz was never the same player that he was. Yeah. This hopefully should be the best of both worlds, where you get the 2017 result, but you get the 2001 to 2004 sustainability, where that window is open. Because look at the guys leading the way this go around. It isn't these guys that are on their 2nd and 3rd contracts, and guys like Jay Ajayi, who he didn't have much left, and LeGarrette Blount, the same type of thing. These are all young pillars that we have talked about, not just now, but before the season even began, that why you want to compromise by going all in now while keeping the long term in the view, not in the rear view, but keeping that ahead of you, is that with the pieces that you have, you could continue to build with all those draft picks that you have. You have most of those pillars signed, the Lane Johnsons, the Jordan Mailatas, the Josh Sweats, the Hassan Riddicks, the list goes on and on. A.J. Brown, you'll end up signing Jalen Hurts. I can continue to go through this, but all of those guys are 24, 25, 26. Sure. And if they continue to get better and they continue to be what they are even, that window should be 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, it's not going to close, but at the same time, Gino, you know that there's a lot of free agents this year, and you can never guarantee anything in the NFL.
Rookie
Eagles
QB
fans know that more than anybody.
You got to play Jalen Hurts soon.
So you want to maximize that window we've made the argument this year. This is the most talented Eagles team, even over the title team in 2017 in franchise history. So you want to, yes, of course, I totally agree with you. I think this window has a lot more potential to be expanded for 5 to 10 years. Jalen Hurts, we talked about it yesterday. He's 24 years old. He's the 2nd youngest quarterback in these playoffs. Brock Purdy and Trevor Lawrence are tied for first at 23. Hurts is 24. But again, when you have the home field advantage, you can never guarantee you're going to get that bye week and that your health is going to go the way it has for the Eagles this year. There's so many moving variables that there is a ton of pressure to get it done this year, just like it was in 2017, because things can change so fast. And I think this team, we talked about it, they're very prepared. The veterans and the young players are built for that kind of pressure. But I'll tell you what, it's a lot easier to play when you are the underdog. I think it's a lot easier to be a New York Giants team that wasn't expected to be here, and they're kind of playing with house money. That's why the Eagles in 2017, I think, could rally. And I think that's why maybe at times 2018 and 2019, they struggled more or the dream team year, the 2015 year, because they were expected to do more. And sometimes that weighs on a team. This team, I think, is built for it, and I think they're going to handle it. But I will say it's a lot easier to be an underdog at times. That's why people even try to almost manufacture it. You know what I mean? And like create billboard material and say nobody believed in you, even if sometimes they did.
There's one person leading the way, though, Lou, that has had expectations on him since he was in high school, since he was playing for his father back in Texas. Jalen Hurts has had expectations every single time he has stepped on a football field. The second he steps into Alabama, when he goes to a national championship.
That's national title or bust for sure. Georgia, too, with Jordan Davis. And
Devontae Smith and all these guys that played SEC football. Fletcher Cox, Darius Slay down in Mississippi State. All those guys went in with the expectation that we are the top of the top. We have to play at the best level to compete with the very best. That's what this playoffs is. You have to put up, shut up, or you're going to go out in a blaze of just downright pity, I would say, because nobody's going to feel bad for you other than yourselves, and you're going to let that opportunity pass you by. I hope that's not the case, and I hope this team understands that with the pressure, there's a lot to back it up, and the pressure comes because you're a good football team, and just be just that.
For sure. Gino, I want to get into coming up next how good this Giants team might be compared to some of those past playoff opponents the Eagles did face from 2017 up until 2021. So we'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And today's edition of the show is brought to you by the Ultimate Pro Football GM. We are so pumped about our new sponsor here at the Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game. I can't tell you how much fun it's been competing against our fellow Locked On NFL hosts. Now it's your turn to compete. More on that later. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You'll manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through seasons, and lead your team to glory, trying to build a dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season, all in this challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline as well, even if you don't have Wi-Fi or data. Play on the go as you want to, when you want to. Locked On Eagles fans, you will be hosting we're going to be hosting a special competition where you can try winning some amazing multi-prizes with Ultimate GM, so stay tuned for details on that in an upcoming episode. Also, to let you know, Locked On Eagles listeners, they get a 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On, so make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM, start your dynasty today. All right, Eagles fans, welcome back. It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen every day. Subscribe as well to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday, and Monday local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Eagles-Giants, Gino, this Saturday at 8:15. Divisional round, the Eagles have a chance to play into the NFC Championship for the first time since 2017. And you look at it, it's against a team that beat a 3 seed in Minnesota on the road. That's a really tough environment. Very impressed with what New York has done. Me and you have definitely hyped up the Giants, and we've been impressed by the job Brian Daboll has done in his first year. He could win Coach of the Year, and Daniel Jones had to save the best game of his career for the most important moment in a road playoff game. But at the same time, we've also mentioned it feels like the Eagles severely outmatch New York when it comes to just from top to bottom overall talent at pretty much every position. And I don't know, Gino, when you look at, they've played now, this is going to be their 8th team they've played in the playoffs since 2017. I think you probably agree this is one of the weaker opponents they've played.
I would say so, but you also have to put stock into the fact that they are a divisional opponent that you've already played.
That's a good factor,
twice, so
which hasn't happened before in these playoffs. Yeah,
you have to take that into consideration. You have to take the momentum of just beating that Minnesota team. This team, they have nothing to worry about. It's like the people that have never been exposed to clowns. I'm scared of clowns, right? And you're walking around, you see a clown, it's nothing to you. But I see a clown, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. They don't know what's going on. They have no fear. They're going into this thing and saying, we could take down this giant, and hey, if we go out swinging, we go out swinging. So that's always a dangerous team. This team, Lou, in particular, it reminds me a lot of Atlanta in 2017, to the opposite regard, where you don't have an aging Julio and an aging Matt Ryan. You have a younger Daniel Jones and a younger Saquon Barkley. But if you held Julio in check in that game, you win the game. Yeah. If you hold Saquon Barkley in check, I believe that you win this football game. And yeah, Atlanta was a team that gave you a run. They were in that game. And I believe the Giants could do exactly that. I think the Giants can be in this game, even have a lead at halftime, and the Eagles are going to have to make a defensive stop toward the end of the game and keep Saquon to, let's say, under 100 yards, because he is the game wrecker. He's the one that you go into that defensive meeting room and say, who are we not going to let ruin this game? It's the guy who is the second overall pick for a reason.
Yeah. Saquon Barkley, only 9 carries for, I think it was 28 yards in that first game, week 14, holding him to 3.1 yards per carry. That's definitely going to be the same mentality here. You take out Saquon Barkley, you force Daniel Jones to throw to Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton, and hopefully you build up a lead like you did last time. It's going to be very hard for Jones to keep up, I think, with Jalen Hurts if they do get hot. it's interesting you compared them to the Falcons. I was even thinking more like the 20, because I actually ranked from 1 to 8 all the playoff opponents the Eagles have played since 2017, just as an exercise. And I think at the top, it's pretty obvious. I had the top 2 teams being last year's Buccaneers team, the reigning Super Bowl champions. I mean, loaded. They could have repeated if they beat the Rams, right? Of course, the 2017 Patriots. I had the 2018 Saints up there. Then the 2017 Vikings and Falcons, 2019 Seattle. And then it was at the bottom. I finally found New York here with Chicago in 2018. I'm like, both teams had a new young offensive-minded head coach that took over, elevated a team, had a really opportunistic defense, and a young quarterback that was mobile and was better than you thought that year. But at the same time, you had question marks about their ceiling. I feel like that's kind of what the Giants remind me of right now, is kind of that 2018 Bears team. But I think they're a little bit better. I think their ceiling's higher than what we saw Chicago eventually became. They were mostly carried by, what was it, the number 1 ranked defense in the league at that point with Khalil Mack.
And that's why I'm hesitant to make that comparison to Chicago. I see what you're saying, but that defense was all world. I don't see the Giants defense being the reason that
maybe the Bears are. Would you rank the Bears ahead of this Giants team?
No, I would put the Giants ahead of that. I just don't think Mitch Trubisky even gave you a chance, to where Daniel Jones, I think, is a real legitimate threat, that if he has a repeat of that game and the guy calling plays.
Well, right, because Chicago only scored 16 points in that game.
Yeah, and Adam Gase is a big dumb dummy. We know that. And Brian Dable has his head on his shoulders. And if he gets things clicking, we have seen what offensive-minded head coaches can do against the Jonathan Gannon defense, to where if they out-scheme them, their Eagles are going to allow a ton of yards if they don't adjust. And Jonathan Gannon's one of those guys that doesn't really like to go away from his base foundation. So we'll see. We'll see if Dable brings together this offensive performance that really can put 30 points on the board for the Giants, and maybe Kayvon Thibodeau or Leonard Williams or Dexter Lawrence can wreck the game. But I think it's a combination, I would say, of that Seattle team where you had some pieces on that defense which really could ruin that game if you took away just a few pieces on offense as well. Besides that, the ceiling, I think that's what you're talking about here. What's the Eagles ceiling versus the Giants ceiling? I think the Giants have a pretty good floor. I don't know how high they can get, though. And that has nothing to do with what is going on in that building. I think everything is going right for them, and their ceiling past this week. That's what I'm very frightened of, because in next year and the year after that, this Brian Dable team is going to be legitimately scary moving forward.
I agree. I kind of want to find the middle ground here of saying we think what the Giants are doing, they're on the right track. But even with Brian Dable coaching a hell of a game last week against Minnesota, he's going to have to do a lot to overcome this Philadelphia defense, even with Jonathan Gannon, who we rarely trust a lot of the time in big moments. The thing is, Jonathan Gannon, it's really easy for him when you have maybe one of the best pass rushes in NFL history from a statistical standpoint, a healthy roster. Avonte Maddox might even play in this game in the slot. I mean, the best cornerback duo in the league right now, the interception leader at safety. So again, I think this game isn't going to be a complete blowout like last time where you win by 30 points. But at the same time, I think eventually removing coaching, of course you can't remove it totally, but pure execution, pure talent. I think the Eagles at home, eventually you're going to see that there is quite a gap here. So that's the thing. I'm not predicting an upset. I'm giving the Giants their respect, but I want everybody to know still, though, I still think this team is light years ahead of where New York is.
Without a doubt. And I've made the comparison all week long, and I will continue to. This Giants team reminds me so much of that 2021 Eagles team.
Yeah.
Were the 2021 Eagles a bad football team? No. Were they a great football team? No. They were a solid, fundamentally good football team, and that's what the Giants are this year. Next year, we already said that NFC East is as good as ever. I can't imagine where this division could go when all of these teams continue to grow in their young coaching staff with their core young pieces. But like you said, Lou, this Eagles team, the expectations are there. At the end of the day, who is going to execute? I will pick the guys that have done it 14 times to get 14 wins to get to this exact situation.
Again, maybe the Giants keep it close. I don't think it's going to be 48-20.
No way.
But at the same time, unless the Eagles start turning the ball over a lot like they have in the past, and they're making a lot of mental mistakes on both sides, lots of penalties, the coaches fail to adjust at all, and the Giants just keep beating you in the same way, I don't think there's a chance of the Giants win this football game. I think it's more of a moral victory kind of thing for New York this week. Keep it close against the juggernaut number 1 seed. I'm still feeling really good about this Eagles team. And again, comparing them to past playoff teams, I think you'd have to argue between them and Chicago in that bottom tier. I don't think this is the 2021 Bucks, the 2017 Patriots, even that 2017 Falcons team, Gino, a year before had the MVP quarterback and was a collapse away from winning a title. So I think the Eagles, as we mentioned earlier this week, definitely got the best case scenario in the playoffs in the divisional round, avoiding a team like Dallas and getting New York. Excited to see what happens Saturday night, kickoff at 8:15. We'll continue to preview this game. Coming up next, it's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
This Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles is presented by our friends over at betonline.net, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and all of us here at Locked On Eagles. Each and every week on Fridays, we're doing LOE3. We'll have a special playoff edition this week where Lou and I will each pick 3 player props brought to you by betonline.net. You can get all the odds, news, and scores at betonline.net. You put in money easily, you bet responsibly, you get the money out quickly once you get your winnings. Take your phone today or anywhere you get internet, go to betonline.net, make sure you put in a safe amount of money, bet responsibly, and always bet with Lou and I here. Do our LOE3 bets this week. If you've done them all year long, in the past 2 years, you could be up 30 units because we're only betting at one place, betonline.net, where the game starts.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen every day, including today's Wednesday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri, getting you ready for the division round of the playoffs. Eagles, Giants on Saturday at 8:15. Just so many awesome storylines, Gino, that we've hit on yesterday's show, Monday as well. We're going to talk to Patricia tomorrow to get behind the enemy lines and get a Giants perspective on this game with our crossover show, a Friday podcast as well. Just a lot of awesome angles, not just to the Eagles-Giants game, but the entire NFL playoffs. You know, we talked about the young quarterbacks and some of the rivalries that are, going on between quarterbacks and, division rivals. It's really cool. The 2022 playoffs have definitely gotten off to an exciting start. When it comes to Saturday, obviously the chance to get to the NFC title, an Eagles home game in the playoffs, exciting in its own right. It stands alone when you have Super Bowl aspirations, but is there anything else you're looking at, maybe too, from like a player perspective? Are there any players that you want to see in this moment, maybe for different reasons or another, that you're watching specifically?
I think obviously we all are looking at the quarterback. Does he step up to the plate? And I believe Jalen Hurts will. But I'm looking at those guys that were brought in this past offseason. Guys like Hassan Reddick, right? He's never played in the playoffs before. This is the first time.
And he just feels like a perfect closer for a close playoff game.
He absolutely does. He feels like when you bring in that Mariano Rivera for the Yankees, that's what it always felt like.
Yeah.
You bring him in and something good is going to happen late in the game when you need him. And I think A.J. Brown as well. This will be his first time suiting up for the Philadelphia Eagles. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, his first time in an Eagles uniform in the playoffs. A lot of these guys that they brought in from elsewhere mixing in with these young guys who haven't gotten to the playoffs yet. You're going to see Jordan Davis suiting up for his first time, James Bradbury's first time in Philadelphia. Just this collection of how all these guys got here that are coming to this building. They all believed in or against that narrative that many people were saying free agents and people don't want to come to Philadelphia. Well, we put that to rest pretty easily because this team and this culture knows what is at stake, and that is building not just a one-time Super Bowl winning team, but building a collective of great teams that just continues to dominate in this early 2020s. That's what I want to see, Lou. I want to see this team get those 2000 to 2004 aspirations where they play hard each and every playoff game. They get rid of the demons of those early 2000s teams where they don't lay any eggs. They can build sustainably, unlike 2017. And it all starts this weekend on Saturday night, because you're going to find out if everybody that was brought in for their exact reason steps up in the biggest moment. What is bigger than a home playoff game against the division rival? You're welcome, NFL, for having 3 out of the 4 NFC teams be from the NFC East, because those ratings on Saturday and Sunday are going to be through the roof. I bet this Eagles-Giants game might be the most viewed game in the whole season, if we're being honest.
And that is the cool thing about the new additions. Of course, they're not Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson. They haven't been through the Andy Reid era with us and the Chip Kelly era and the Doug Peterson. Those guys hold a special place in our heart. But we know from 2017 that you can become a legend in this city by just having big moments when it matters most in the playoffs. I mean, Jay Ajayi played. Jay Ajayi played in combined 2017 to 2019. He didn't even play in 16 full games. And I'll mention Jay Ajayi until I'm 80 years old. I'll remember the train and the contributions he made to that Super Bowl team. As you mentioned, Corey Clement is a folk hero in Philadelphia. It feels like a myth, to be honest. The fact that he did what he did in Super Bowl 52 doesn't even feel real. And you look at, just so many guys like that. Chris Long is beloved in Philadelphia, and he was only here for 2 years. But because these guys stepped up in huge moments during a Super Bowl year and then another deep run, you can become a legend really fast. And I think that's another huge opportunity, is to just, you're a football legend. These are the moments where people will never forget you, no matter what you do outside of it. Malcolm Smith won Seattle. He was a Super Bowl MVP. Nobody, despite him being a nothing before and after that in the NFL, will never be forgotten. So that's definitely a cool angle to this for sure, Gino. And I'm also looking forward to just some of the other guys that might have a little extra incentive to beat the New York Giants or perform well. I mean, James Bradberry, this is the team last year that cut him basically and said, we don't want him on our team. And this year he was named as a first-team All-Pro. So Bradberry has a chip on his shoulder. And then Boston Scott. I want to see if this continues into the playoffs. It started creating a mind of its own, this Boston Scott Giants killer. I don't know where this started or why it is real, but it is absolutely real. He has 10 of his 17 touchdowns against the Giants. He's literally scored in every game he's played against New York. If he can do that now in a playoff game too, this legend can continue.
He feels like the second coming of Brian Westbrook against the Giants.
I don't get it though. I wonder if there is something real to this, or if it was a coincidence that started to build up and that's how it became a thing. Because Miles Sanders was mic'd up and he called Boston Scott the giant killer.
That's the thing about Philadelphia. I mean, you talk about all these guys who became instant legends and instant folk heroes. There's just something different about this place. There's just something different when you turn this playoff game on and you feel it. And I don't know what you're going to say to that point that Philadelphia is different, but we have seen it, man. Like, there's something special in that building. And come Saturday night, everybody watching that's not in that building is going to feel the exact same thing. You're going to feel goosebumps. You're going to feel like you're actually there. And all the ghosts and the demons of old that ruled the vet and the Donovan McNabb era, that's all going to be there. And there's just something different about Philadelphia. I don't know how to encompass it into a word, but I don't think 31 other franchises really get to experience it. There's just something different about it. Guys like Boston Scott are legends forever. I mean, heck, I know it's cliche, but the Vince Papale thing where you can literally write a Hollywood story based on what has happened in Philadelphia. There's so many times the Miracle at the Meadowlands 1, the Miracle at the Meadowlands number 2, the whole Michael Vick situation, the Nick Foles rise, the Nick Foles fall, the Nick Foles rise again, Carson Wentz, Jalen
it's always
Hurts.
Dramatic for sure. That's what you learn.
You learn that this team, you cannot take anything for granted, and you can't really look at them in a bad light when anything ever goes right or wrong, because this is the story that we're meant to be given. And I don't know what to say. We've only gotten one Super Bowl out of it, but this journey, we're going to see
more than
what
a lot of
happens
people have, Gino. So
it is, and I'll never take it for
building.
granted. I love it, man. Saturday night's going to be so fun.
It's going to be electric.
Get ready.
We got 2 more shows for you tomorrow with Locked On Giants host Patricia Traina. Gino and I will do a crossover with her, get a Giants perspective on this matchup, and we'll also wrap up the week of shows Friday as well. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms, on YouTube as well, and make sure you always hit us up on Twitter. We're always talking birds, at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. Once again, thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen every day. Also, make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you the local insight you love to the national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your shows. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.